Goswami. Jiva Goswami? Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya, 6 Goswamis from Vrindavan. Does he know? Lord Chaitanya, 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. Yes? And the youngest of them was Jiva Goswami. Jiva Goswami compiled the Sandarbhas, 6 Sandarbhas, and one of those 6 Sandarbhas was Bhakti Sandarbha. It's the biggest one of all of them. And in Bhakti Sandarbha, he mentions, Jiva Goswami writes about a pastime of Lord Nrsimhadev, where Lord Nrsimhadev appeared, because the question came up, and it's a nice question. Other than Lord Nrsimhadev coming out of a pillar and finishing Hiranyakashipu and protecting Prahlad, are there other examples of Lord Nrsimhadev and his interacting with devotees besides that one? That's the question. So here's one. It's in Bhakti Sandarbha by Jiva Goswami, and here's the translation. A great devotee Vaishnava Brahmana named Vishvaksena wandered about the earth. One day, he entered the edge of a forest. The son of the village leader came and said to him, "Who are you?" When the Brahmana identified himself, the son said, "Today my head hurts. I cannot worship Shiva, my worshipable deity. You do the worship in my place." And quoting Vishnu Dharma, or Dharmottara, the Brahmana answered, "I'm a Brahmana dedicated to Vishnu. I should worship only Vishnu. I worship no one else. Therefore, please go away quickly." When he said this, the son raised his sword to cut off his head. The Brahmana considered it not desirable to die by his hand and said, "I will go there." Going there, he thought in his mind, because he increases ignorance, for this reason Shiva is in Tamagun, Nrsimha should appear here to stop the worship of Shiva, since ignorance can be broken with eradication of Shiva's associates. Just as the sun rises and with its rays destroys ignorance, I will worship Nrsimha in the Shiva deity, since Shiva's worshippers have worshipped him in this form. Taking a handful of flowers, he said, "I offer respects to Nrsimha." The son of the village leader raised his sword in anger. Suddenly the linga split, and Nrsimha appeared and killed the son with his followers. And Jiva Goswami ends this passage. There is a Nrsimha deity in the south named Linga Spota, the deity of that particular pastime. So he not only appeared from a pillar to protect Prahlad, but according to Vishnu Dharmottara, here's another one. Now, from Garuda Purana, there's a different description of Lord Nrsimhadev's appearance, and it's connected to, I'll read or summarize. Lord Shiva worshipped Lord Nrsimhadev in a particular circumstance. That particular circumstance was, according to Varaha Purana, there are 9 goddesses that appeared from Vishnu, Shiva, and 6 other main deities, so the 8 goddesses that appeared from different deities to kill a demon. The demon's name was Andhaka. 8 goddesses. They're called Matra, mothers, Matraganas. Matraganas. So the Matraganas, after the demon was killed, they approached Lord Shiva and said they wanted his permission because they wanted to devour the entire universe along with its deities, the devas, demons, and human beings with Shiva's blessing. Please permit us. Shiva didn't agree. Certainly all these people are to be protected by you all. Therefore, this ruthless mentality should be diverted. So they went ahead and started doing it anyways. Began to devour the 3 worlds and all mobile and immobile creatures. Then Lord Shiva began to meditate on Lord Vishnu. There's a prayer, and this is not the smoothest translation. This is kind of a archaic translation, but he offers prayers to Lord Shiva, to Lord Nrsimhadev. He has no beginning or death. He is the originator of all living beings. His tongue blazes like lightning. He has great curved teeth, and his mane blazes like a garland. He has bracelets studded with gems. He has a brilliant crown. He is bedecked with a golden mane, and with his brilliance he pervades the whole Brahmanda. The hairs on his body curl in small circles, and he is wearing a great garland consisting of many flowers of variegated colors. As soon as he was meditated upon, the Lord appeared. Lord Nrsimhadev appeared before Shankara, assuming the form just as it was conceived by Rudra with great devotion. In the same dazzling form, unperceivable by the devas, the Lord stood there. Lord Shiva knelt before the Lord and prayed, "O Lord of the universe, obeisances to you, having the body of a man lion, shining with claws, resembling an oyster shell with which the Lord of demons, Hiranyakashipu, was killed. You have the golden and tawny colored body of that demon clinging to your lotus-like nails. Obeisances to Padmanabha, obeisances to the preceptor of the world. Your roar is like the rumbling clouds at the end of the kalpa, O deity, shining with the luster of 10 million suns." It goes on. O fiery deity, having the velocity of 1,000 winds, O compassionate one. Having sung the hymn to the Lord of Lords, Hari, in the form of Nrsimha, Shiva spoke in all humility. "I have created the Matraganas for the destruction of the demon Andhaka. Disregarding my advice, they are devouring all the wonderful created beings of the universe. Having created them, I am unable to kill them, although I am undefeated elsewhere. Having first created them, how can I wish for their annihilation?" Thus addressed by Lord Shiva, Hari, in the form of Nrsimha, created 1,000 goddesses from the tip of his tongue. Hari, the Lord of speech, subdued the mothers and protected the devas. He accorded peace and happiness to the world and vanished. then it gives benediction. Those who recite these prayers get all good fortune, etc., etc. So he appeared at the request of Lord Shiva. Want to speak a few more more modern pastimes, but I can't find that one in particular. There's one very special one where he appeared before a young girl in South Africa. Pardon me. Find it. Here's the story about the deity's eyes. Have you seen photos of Lord Nrsimhadev in Mayapur? And he has big, blazing red eyes. Makes him look very fearful. So it's a story of somebody decided they wanted to change out those eyes and give him different eyes, and he didn't like it. That's the story. On a warm December morning last year, Atmarati Dasi, after offering my obeisances to the captivating Prahlad, who stands next to his beloved Lord with his hands folded and his small body decorated with fresh flowers and beautiful ornaments, I prayed, my dear Prahlad, you're expert in receiving all kinds of blessings from Lord Nrsimhadev. You even received the blessings of forgiveness for your demoniac father, Hiranyakashipu. Please ask your Lord to bless this poor soul with the destruction of everything that stands in the way of her devotional service. Show me the way to real happiness. Then, as I stood meditating on the Lord's beauty and mercy, I heard a very sweet, deep voice. I want my eyes back. At first, I ignored it and kept my mind in the mode of prayer. But the voice spoke a second time. I want my eyes back. Attempting, again, to disregard this clear message, raised a burning and almost painful sensation in my heart. I was dumbfounded. What to do? The voice continued, go to the pujari. Okay. So we went to the pujari, Jananivas. He was reading Srimad Bhagavatam. The atmosphere in the pujari area was very serene. I stood there and waited for him to notice me. Then after I told him what happened, he said to me to go see his twin brother, Pankajangri, the actual pujari of Lord Nrsimhadev. The following day, as I approached the magnificent form of Lord Nrsimhadev, my mind buzzed with doubt. What if that voice was just my mind, demanding the healing of my eyesight, which has been very poor and painful for the past 6 weeks? I prayed for the answer. The voice spoke again to me, this time in a more serious and firm tone. You will get your eyes back when I get mine. His form always emanates a soft light, and my heart felt peaceful and warm. I felt overwhelmed with unusual confidence, as if my head were touching the sky. The next morning at 2:20 a.m., I woke up, fully refreshed and wide awake. It was unusually early for me, as I usually get up around 6 o'clock. A soft voice urged me to rise, bathe, and attend Mangalarti, which I did. After the ceremony was over, the same voice urged me to follow Pankajangri Prabhu from Lord Nrsimhadev's altar into the Pujari room. I felt very embarrassed and had tears in my eyes, etc. As he was preparing articles for the Lord's Abhishek, I started to talk to him. Pankajangri Prabhu listened very attentively to my story. Then, without saying anything, he smiled and gave me Maha sweets from Nrsimhadev's plate. The following morning, when my daughter returned from the temple, she was shouting, "Mommy, they changed Nrsimha's eyes. He has beautiful red eyes now." And as the sweet, deep voice had promised, my eyesight was miraculously cured within 3 days. The editor's note. One day, a devotee came to Mayapur and offered 2 precious yellow stones for his eyes, and the pujaris reluctantly changed the eyes of the deity. They felt happy when the Lord revealed that he wanted his original red eyes. This is an article written in 1997. Well, here it says, just read some. Other pastimes of Lord Nrsimhadev, pastime 1. Lord Nrsimhadev's pujari had a very startling dream in which the director of the temple called him and told him to bring some diesel oil. A dream by the pujari, where the temple manager called him and said, "Bring some diesel oil, we're going to sacrifice Lord Nrsimhadev." "You're going to do what?" "Yes, we're going to sacrifice Lord Nrsimhadev." "You can't do that, this is crazy." "Just bring the diesel, will you?" "Okay, I'll bring the oil, but I don't want anything to do with this, it doesn't make any sense." After some time, the pujari returned to the temple and was totally shocked to see that everything had been completely burned by a great fire, and all that remained of the deity was his feet and ankles. Early the next morning, he approached the chief pujari and asked if he could explain the meaning of this terrible nightmare. Apparently that was a dream. After thinking for a while, he began to smile and said, "Oh yes, you see, yesterday was the start of Jaladan. That's a festival of dripping water on Shalagram for 1 month. But we forgot to observe it. Therefore, Lord Nrsimhadev is letting you know that he is burning up, and you should immediately bring the Jaladan," which we did. Lord Nrsimhadev. Once, Lord Nrsimhadev's worship was going on as usual when the pujari noticed that one flower fell from Nrsimhadev's garland. The pujari asked the visitors if anyone was offering any special prayers to Lord Nrsimhadev. The visitors in front did not say anything, but from the back, one lady came forward with tears in her eyes. She said, "My daughter got married about 4 or 5 years ago, and she has no issue. The people in my son-in-law's house considered it inauspicious, so I was praying to Nrsimhadev that he might help her in her desperate situation." The pujari then said, "Your prayer is granted. The symptom is that this flower fell from Nrsimhadev's garland. Please take this and keep it nicely. You can wash this flower and give the water to your daughter to drink." Then the lady left, and later the pujari forgot the incident. After 1 year, the same devotee, along with her daughter, son-in-law, and a newborn baby, came smiling to Nrsimhadev. She reminded the Pujari about the prayer she made 1 year back, as a result of which her daughter gave birth to a very nice baby boy, whom they named Prahlad. Pastime 3. Kalyani Dasi has 2 daughters. The elder one is Pratibha, and the younger is Anubha. Both of them are married, and they have grown-up children. They both live in Berhampur. You know where?
Yeah, it's very close to that place.
Okay,
From
Berhampur.
Mayapur.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Once, the husband of Pratibha fell extremely sick and was in a coma, near to death. Along with the other relatives, the younger sister, Anubha, was also in great anxiety about her brother-in-law's situation. She went to the hospital, as she was a devotee, and she prayed to Lord Nrsimhadev to help her brother-in-law. She came home and went to bed with a heavy heart. At the end of the night, she had a dream in which Lord Nrsimhadev came near to her and told her, "Don't worry, your brother-in-law is okay." And then her dream broke. In the morning, the news came from the hospital that the patient was doing well. His oxygen and the tubes in his body, the saline drip, had been removed, and he was now able to talk. There's lots of stories of Lord Nrsimhadev healing people. He's like Dr. Nrsimhadev. Pastime 4. There was a fight in a village, and in the course of the fight, one person was attacked with acid, as a result of which his whole face was burnt and terribly disfigured. The sight of one of the eyes was completely lost, and the other eye had only about 10% vision. The doctors said that the remaining eye, through which he had 10% vision, would also go blind very soon. They suggested taking the patient to Vellore in South India for further treatment to see if they could do something about it. At that time, a devotee who was there suggested that they should pray to Lord Nrsimhadev for the recovery of his eyes. As a result, they prayed to Lord Nrsimhadev. The next day, much to the doctor's surprise, it was found that the patient could see everything very nicely. There's so many Dr. Nrsimha stories. Pastime 5. One Russian lady used to make tulsi garlands for Nrsimhadev every day. Being pleased with her, Nrsimhadev's Pujari gave her one of Lord Nrsimhadev's false fingernails, as prasad. She took it and kept it with her. That night, she had a dream in which she saw that Lord Nrsimhadev had come to her and was sitting on her bed. The Lord then put his fingers with his long nails inside her heart and pulled out something black and said, "You see this? This is not love, this is lust, and there is still more here. What shall I do with it?" She could not reply, and her dream broke. The next day, she went before Lord Nrsimhadev and asked him to throw it far away. Pastime 6. The father of one of the devotees of the ISKCON Youth Forum used to argue. The father used to argue with one of the boys in the youth forum. "Why do we have to worship Nrsimhadev when Radha Madhava are there?" The boy tried to help his father understand that Krishna and Nrsimhadev are not different, but his father was not very convinced. During the Shringa Chaturdasi, this boy, along with his father, came to the temple and were watching Lord Nrsimhadev's Abhishek. Suddenly, the boy's father saw Madhava's face in place of Nrsimhadev's. He turned to Radha Madhava, and again he looked back at Nrsimhadev and found Nrsimhadev's face as Madhava. Still, this continued for about 20 seconds. In this way, he realized there's no difference. So there's a pastime 7. Some Mataji from South Calcutta became sick. She was trying various treatments. Nothing worked. The doctors told her that her problem was thyroid. As a result, she eventually be unable to move. She was wondering what to do. She remembered about Lord Nrsimhadev and the bracelets which she was supposed to offer him. Even though she was ill, she made the endeavor to come to Mayapur and give him the bracelets. After offering them to Lord Nrsimhadev, all the symptoms of illness were totally removed within 3 days. You got any bracelets? There's more. There's some narrations of Lord Nrsimhadev appearing before devotees. There's a Prabhupada disciple I know. Baba Bhuti is his name. And he was assigned to become the Nrsimhadev's pujari. And he was in anxiety because he heard all these stories. You can't mess with Lord Nrsimhadev, you're in big trouble. So he was fearful. Let's see. Baba Bhuti was particularly frightened and always nervous worshipping him. One night, after putting the Lord to rest, he was leaving the altar, but when he heard such a tremendous sound that it made his hair stand on end, looking back fearfully, he saw that everything was in place. So he quickly left, locked the door, paid his obeisances, praying to forgiveness for any offenses he might have inadvertently committed. And at night, he was woken by his bed shaken very hard. He was sleeping on the top bunk. So I thought it must be the pujari below, getting ready for attending Mangalarti. However, when he opened his eyes, he saw Nrsimhadev sitting on his bed. Baba Bhuti became very fearful, practically to the point of panic. He tried to get up. Lord Nrsimhadev placed his 2 hands, which felt like the weight of the universe, on his shoulders. Be peaceful. Be calm. I've just come to tell you that when you worship me in the temple, there's no need to fear me. Please, give up this fear. The Lord then disappeared. But Baba Bhuti began to run up and down the veranda of the long building that's in Mayapur. What happened? Asked some concerned devotees. They couldn't understand his replies. They thought maybe he's haunted by a ghost. And Baba Bhuti ran over to the temple and fell before the deity as he was being worshipped. After some time, he became a little pacified and began walking back to his room. I was wondering why everyone was staring at me, but he still had his night clothing on. And then this narrator said he saw Baba Bhuti some years later and asked him about the incident. Is it true? He said yes. And he said, I'll show you the marks on my shoulders. It's been healed significantly, but the marks are still there. He showed the marks to the person who wrote this little article. So he doesn't only come out of a pillar. One more. Near the ISKCON center is several Gaudiya Math temples. One head pujari of one of those temples was On Nrsimha Chaturdasi night, he spent the night chanting japa. At the end of the night, Nrsimhadev manifested himself in his room. And it was the form of Nrsimhadev at ISKCON Center. It's like, Ugra Nrsimha, Ugra. It's specifically the feature just before he pounces on Hiranyakashipu. His arms are raised, his jaws are open, he's roaring. Very intense moment. And he went to see Lord Nrsimhadev that morning after he finished his worship and offered his prayers to Lord Nrsimhadev for his kindness. So hopefully we'll be fasting and doing other things to observe Nrsimha Chaturdasi 1 week from today. And I think I'm now ready to go to the prayers. So we've been reading from Canto 7, Chapter 9, Prayers by Prahlad. And he had just begun prayers, and his first prayers were expressions of humility. And now he's going to say something about, although I have no qualification, you're moved not by qualifications anyways, you're moved by sincere devotion. And I don't have that either, but because the devas, basically he's saying because the demigods have made this request of me, they're my superiors. He's their superior, but they're my superiors. And because they made this request, I have to. But I'm confident you'll accept because your nature is you're very kind. And if something is offered with humility and sincerity, you'll accept no matter what it is. Because of your quality, I'll carry on. Although I was born in a demoniac family, I may without a doubt offer prayers to the Lord with full endeavor, as far as my intelligence allows. Anyone who has been forced by ignorance to enter the material world may be purified of material life if he offers prayers to the Lord and hears the Lord's glories. O my Lord, all the demigods headed by Lord Brahma are sincere servants of your lordship, who are situated in a transcendental position. Therefore, they are not like us, meaning the demons, he and his father. Your appearance in this fearsome form is your pastime for your own pleasure. Such an incarnation is always meant for the protection and improvement of the universe. So this is the beginning of his prayers. He is recognizing this fierce feature, which was a cause of fear in others, was not fearful to him because he understood this is your pastime and it's actually, you come to protect us. And so, since Hiranyakashipu is finished now, please take away that fear because it's scaring the demigods. And that was what they were asked. He was asked to do, is bring his anger down so we can be before him without being afraid. Yeah. My dear Lord Nrsimhadev, please therefore cease your anger now that my father, the great demon Hiranyakashipu, has been killed. Since even saintly persons take pleasure in the killing of a scorpion or a snake, all the worlds have achieved great satisfaction because of the death of this demon. Now they are confident of their happiness, and they will always remember your auspicious incarnation in order to become free from fear. I'll read the short purport. The most important point in this verse is that although saintly persons never desire the killing of any living entity, they take pleasure in the killing of envious living entities, like snakes and scorpions. Hiranyakashipu was killed because he was worse than a snake or scorpion, and therefore everyone was happy. Now, there was no need for the Lord to be angry. The devotees can always remember the form of Lord Nrsimhadev when they are in danger, and therefore the appearance of Nrsimhadev was not at all inauspicious. The Lord's appearance is always worshipable and auspicious for the sane persons and devotees. On more than one occasion, I heard Prabhupada tell a story about a visit that he made to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's headquarters. Now, some of you may have been there. Have any of you been to the Chaitanya Mat? Okay, you have. It's as you're approaching the ISKCON temple, the Mayapur temple, there's the Ganga is on the right, and there's a road, and then there's structures on the left. And as you're approaching, even before you get to the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is the headquarters of Bhaktisiddhanta, where it's a very, the boundary wall. Within the laws of West Bengal, agricultural land can be under the jurisdiction only a certain number of acres. So they have a boundary wall around their property. And on their property, there's many things, because Bhaktisiddhanta developed it in a particular way. The place where Bhaktisiddhanta performed his bhajan for over 8 years of chanting this incalculable vrata of rounds every day, same number of rounds as Haridas Thakur. You know how many rounds that was? How many rounds many ISKCON devotees chant? 16 rounds, right? 16. So for many people, some people take a little less, some people take a little more, but commonly 16 rounds takes 2 hours. Commonly, more or less. And so you multiply that by 4, that's 64 rounds. 16 times 4, 64. So that makes 4 times 2 rounds is 8 hours, right? And then 3 times 64 is what Haridas Thakur chanted. So that takes 24 hours. If you just chant it, pace of 16 rounds in 2 hours. And he did that, Haridas did that for his life, and Bhaktisiddhanta took the same vrata. It's inhuman. It's not ordinary. And the place where he did it is right there at what later became the Chaitanya Mat. The room, it wasn't a room, it was just under a tree. Later they built a room. And there's so many other things that are there in his headquarters. There's nice deities of Gandharvaka, Giridhari. When Bhaktisiddhanta finished his vrata, shortly after that, he accepted sannyas in a very unique way. He sat in front of a photograph of Gorkishore and accepted sannyas. Pretty transcendental. And then he established formally, whatever the legal instrument was for the Gaudiya Math, he established this nice logo for the Gaudiya Math, and he wanted to have deities. So he personally went to Jaipur to purchase deities. And there was no deities that he liked. now there's different versions, but the local pujari, no, not pujari, the local in charge person, whatever his title is, was interviewed recently to find out, what, because there's Janadivas has a slightly different version. So his version, translated from Bengali into English, was Bhaktisiddhanta went and he became very attracted to a particular set of deities. And the pujari said, no, they're already promised to somebody else. And that night, Bhaktisiddhanta had a dream in which those deities appeared in his dream, and the deities told him, I am Gandharvika, and he is Giridhari, and I want to be worshipped by you. So make the arrangement. So he went back and told the murti maker, and the murti maker believed him because he's a sadhu, not just because he's a pure Vaishnava. That it was very clear, this is what this deity in my shop want. They want to be worshipped by him. So he not only allowed him to take the deities back to Mayapur, he gave them to him as a gift. Gandharvika Giridhari to this day, beautiful deities are being worshipped at Chaitanya Mat. And there's a bit of a field where they would have different festivals. There's the Samadhi of Bhaktisiddhanta there's a little area. Then keep going, and there was a house, a 2-story house where he would live, and Prabhupada described at a certain hour every morning, one of the things that he did was like a lion. He would pace up and down on the veranda and make arguments against Vaishnavism and defeat the arguments against Vaishnavism every day. It's very, very, very intense. It's part of his sadhana. So one day when Prabhupada was visiting, there was a lot of noise over some distance away. So everyone, when there's a lot of noise, you go, what's going on? What's going on? So when he found out that there was a cobra that the Bengalis were, getting all noisy about, like do something with this cobra. Bhaktisiddhanta heard the noise, came to the veranda, called down and said, kill it. And they killed it under his order. And Prabhupada said, I didn't know how to handle that. I mean, how can a sadhu say, kill it? The sadhus don't kill. But then he said, later I read this verse in the Bhagavatam and I was pacified. I'll read what it says again. Even saintly persons take pleasure in the killing of a scorpion or a snake. All the worlds have achieved great satisfaction because the death of this demon. Now, these two, scorpions and snakes, they're not only they're lethal, but they're envious. And they strike without provocation. Just come near them. A scorpion. You've seen a scorpion? You know what they look like from a photograph. I had a little encounter with a scorpion once. I'll tell a story. It's like, for the kids. A nice story time. Some years ago, there was a meeting in Italy. And Villa Vrindavan, I think. I'm not sure which place it was. That wasn't Villa. It was another one of the places we had some meeting. And they were doing some construction in that building, and they gave me a room to myself upstairs where the construction was going on. It's a big room, and I was a little worried because I had a roommate, a little scorpion. And the scorpion has this tail that curves the back. It moves back and forth. And I was, Okay, I got a roommate. I mean, I'm a visitor and he lives here, so And every day, every morning, as I was chanting japa, he would circumambulate his kingdom. He went around the whole room in a big circle, and then went back to wherever his home was. He was like staking his territory, and I got used to it. And then I just made peace with the scorpion. And then one morning, I saw him curled up. He had gone to sleep. So I got some broom and just like scooted him out the door, and he tumbled around out the door and down the hall into some other place besides his home. And he didn't come back again. And I told the authorities, he gave me a room with a roommate. They said, "Oh, that kind, they don't harm you." I said, "Yeah, you sure?" But I didn't kill him. Just like showed him, to another room. I'm sure he was okay. But so the scorpions and snakes, without provocation, they'll strike. Just come near them. You're in my territory. They don't bark like dogs do. They strike, and they're deadly. So according to the other explanations, it's arising out of envy. And Hiranyakashipu was more dangerous than both because he was very powerful. And without provocation, he would finish people. So the demigods, everyone, was very happy. And Prahlad, although his son, he was recognizing that it was a big relief for the whole universe that you, Lord Nrsimhadev, you finished him. But he's done, so now your anger isn't needed anymore. Please put it away. Last verse for this evening. My Lord, we're never conquered by anyone. I'm certainly not afraid of your ferocious mouth and tongue, your eyes bright like the sun, and your frowning eyebrows. I do not fear your sharp, pinching teeth, your garland of intestines, your mane soaked with blood, or your high, wedge-like ears. When I was little, we had a cat, and cats like to chase mice. There weren't any mice where we were, but I've seen when they're ready to pounce on their prey, their ears go up. They stand motionless, but their wedge-like ears, I can relate to that one. Nor do I fear your tumultuous roaring, which makes elephants flee to a distant place, or your nails, which are meant to kill your enemies. O most powerful, insurmountable Lord, who are kind to the fallen souls, I have been put into the association of demons as a result of my activities. Now, he didn't do any bad karma and therefore became Prahlad. That's his humility. But he's speaking like that. And therefore, I'm very much afraid of my condition of life within this material world. When will that moment come when you will call me to the shelter of your lotus feet, which are the ultimate goal for liberation from conditional life? Now, we often hear, with those of us that read Prabhupada's books and hear his Bhaktivedanta purports and commentaries and things, that the Bhagavatam is not encouraging us, Prahlad is not encouraging us to be salvationists. Like, let me out of here, this place is crazy. That's not the advocacy of the Bhagavatam in general. But there is an advocacy. Prabhupada would over and over and over and over, and then again and again and again and again, emphasize the complacency and the stagnation that people have with trying to find happiness in the material world, although it isn't here, and trying different methods of adjusting things and maneuvering things and making a permanent settlement in a place that's miserable. That's, using his language over and over and over. So that much letting go of the unwholesome association that he had, although with that unwholesome association, he was an ecstatic devotee because of the association he had received from Narada. And that was with him. It hadn't left him. He was on the topmost stage, chapter 4, we're reading in the morning. Topmost stage of devotion. Even before Lord Nrsimhadev appeared. Very, very elevated personality. But his concern, we're also going to hear, and preempting this a little bit, his concern is for the souls that are loitering in the material world and not knowing anything else. Gotta go.
No.
No? Okay. I'm going to share something that's a little off topic, but it's on topic. It's on the topic of the compassion of Prahlad and the compassion of Lord Nrsimhadev, who has compassion upon the Prahlads, the persons who take shelter of him and wish well for others. Before coming here, I was in New Jersey. And just before coming to New Jersey, I was in Connecticut. When you're a sannyasi, you travel a lot. So I was staying at a home of a nice devotee couple. They're both from Tamil Nadu. They're Tamil speaking, from their birth. And one of their neighbors was also from Tamil Nadu, born in a Brahmin family and, very pious people. I mean, because they wanted to meet me. This is our guru, so they wanted to come. So I gave them a Bhagavad Gita. Not like they didn't know Bhagavad Gita. So the husband was just doing some sharing. And in his sharing, that this is the compassion of Prahlad and the compassion of Prabhupada. So is the punchline. He recently his father had passed away, so it was on his mind, and he was sharing about his father, that his father lived until he was 80, and the from the time he was 59, his father retired, and from the day he retired, every morning he would rise early, take his bath, chant Vishnu Sahasranam, and read Srimad Bhagavatam, and chant Ram and Krishna's name. I didn't ask what mantra, Ram and Krishna's name. That's what he did all day. And until he was 80. He loved Srimad Bhagavatam. And it wasn't an ISKCON follower, just somebody, a Brahmin, by not just by birth, but by his character. He said the last 20 hours, he's only stopped chanting Ram and Krishna's name long enough to take a few spoonfuls of buttermilk, and he left this world chanting Ram and Krishna's name. I didn't ask, but he was a little emotional because it happened relatively recently. He was just sharing this with me. And I was, I don't know what's my condition going to be, but you're very fortunate to have a father who left the world in that condition, and now you have a legacy to follow. And then your children, one is in medical school and others in 7th grade. And, we talk different things. And I didn't say, but I was thinking in preparation for Bhakti, Prabhupada was also deep in devotion, and he not only chanted, but he went to Vrindavan. But specifically, when he went to Vrindavan, what was his purpose? It was after his household life. He had taken Vanaprastha stage of life, and he lived in a tiny room. I mean, a tiny room that's, I forget the dimensions, but looking at the photograph of the place, it's like from this wall to that wall and just narrow. Institutional thing. The buildings in India with the walls are 3 feet thick and, the paint's falling off the walls and that was the room that he stayed in. There's no toilet, no kitchen, no bath. So I found out but he lived there for 6 years with next to nothing. It was in a temple, one of the, Prabhupada writes, in Vrindavan there are 5,000 temples. The temple was a deity of something. I forget the name of the deity. Yugal. No, Yugal something. Maybe it was Yugal Kishore. Yugal something deity. Huh? Don't guess. It's just a householder's home. And in their home, there was a little courtyard, and on the other side of the courtyard was an altar where they had deities, of Radha and Krishna. So it was like called the temple of such and such and such, but it's just somebody's home. And the man that was in charge, anyway, he had next to nothing, but he went to Vrindavan not to live his final days and go back to Godhead, living in Vrindavan. He went to Vrindavan for the inspiration and the tranquility of preparing for his mission, because he understood to go to America, to go to the West, he needed the message of Lord Chaitanya presented. The message of Lord Chaitanya is the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. So he began preparing. While he was still in that little tiny room, he prepared the first volume of the first canto, because it was to be in 3 volumes. It was very dedicated. So, and what was he going to do with that? He wasn't going to stay in Vrindavan. He had to somehow go to the West. I mean, I'm trying to portray the extent of the compassion of our founder Acharya at a similar old age. He was not just, anyway, he wasn't a bhajananandi. He certainly did bhajan, but his beyond that was this wishing that people who are suffering all over the world have at least the opportunity to become free from that suffering, unnecessary suffering. How many people are suffering? Everyone. And all different species of life, but at least in this human form of life, people should have the opportunity. This is Prahlad. It's the mood of Prahlad. And that, for me, anyways, that's one of the things I really, really like about Nrsimha Chaturdasi, is hearing about Prahlad and the compassion of Prahlad. Because that's what he wanted. I don't want to go back. I don't want to go to the spiritual. Later, he's saying, please take me. Later, he's saying, I won't go without all the other persons who are suffering in this world. He speaks strong language, the fools and rascals, but because they're misusing this human form of life, looking for happiness where there's no happiness and suffering. I want them to be delivered. And that's our founder Acharya. That's Prahlad. That's a great soul. No, it's certainly a great soul that from the age of 59, he just chanted Ram and Krishna's name and read the Bhagavatam. And he loved the Bhagavatam. And he passed it on to his son, who was telling me about how his father loved the Bhagavatam. And he reads the Bhagavatam regularly. I asked him, when you read the Bhagavatam, does it have commentary? No, I just read the verses in his mother tongue. So we'll make an arrangement for him to get the Bhaktivedanta purports. Just one other thing, and I'll stop. Sometimes it happens that people that are born in India complete their undergraduate studies in India, come here, do their graduate studies in America, and get a job in America and settle down in America. Sometimes that happens. A lot of times it happens, at least amongst the devotee circle. And so there's one girl who that happened, and then something else happened. She met devotees and she became a devotee. And she was married to a devotee husband. And then later she went back to visit her grandma. But because her grandma also read the Bhagavatam since she was young. And as her grandma, she read it all the time. So she thought it would be nice if in her mother's native tongue, she could give him the BBT translation of Srimad Bhagavatam. She brought a copy when she visited her home. And her grandmother told her, after spending a month at home, that I've been reading all my life, I never understood. I love the Bhagavatam, but I never really understood it. And now I'm starting to understand it. It's so the gift of our founder Acharya. Just because her granddaughter went to America to study and get a job and get married and meet devotees and become a devotee and take back to her grandmother the Bhaktivedanta purports. The gift that Prabhupada gave the world is just incredible. And Prahlad's a big inspiration. The Bhagavatam is a big inspiration, and Prahlad is outstanding within the Bhagavatam for that same mood. Okay, so let's see if there's some discussion. Any comments or thoughts you want to share?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you very much. It was fantastic to hear those pastimes of Lord Nrsimhadev in the recent times. I have one question. That's we have covered this in last 2 or 3 classes, where we discussed about Madhu Dvisha and how envy as well as anger has got its place in the spiritual world.
That's the meaning of Dvisha, Madhu Dvisha, envy.
Yeah, and we saw that Nrsimhadev was very angry, and demigods, goddess Lakshmi, they all tried to pacify him, but he didn't. And so, I was referencing the couple of days ago. We were discussing that anger has its place, but anger should be used to punish the demons. And in this particular pastime, because after Hiranyakashipu is finished, still Lord Nrsimha is not pacified and he still is angry. I'm thinking about, besides just the glorification of his devotee, that is Prahlad Maharaj,
yes,
is there any other reason?
That's
why?
it. He wanted Prahlad to be honored even more than the demigods. Mission accomplished.
Okay. Thank you, Maharaj. That was my question. Thank you.
Practically, as soon as he saw Prahlad, his anger subsided. He was prostrated before him. He lifted him up and embraced him and patted him on the head. I mean, you don't do that when you're angry. You do other things when you're angry. So just by seeing him, the anger, but he continued as if he was still angry. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So I have 3 small questions, Maharaj. So when Jai Vijay came as in 3 birds as demons, So one birth was Shishupal and Dantavakra. So I don't know how Dantavakra was killed, but there was one reason why they came in a demon life, because Lord wanted to have the pleasure of fighting with the demons. That was some discussion also. So I was thinking that when Shishupal was killed, he was like there was no fight. He was blaspheming, but Krishna just killed him with the Sudarshan.
Sudarshan Chakra.
So did he get pleasure of fighting there? Or
Did he get what?
pleasure of fighting?
Oh, tricky question. Well, when you consider the Lord's pastimes, those pastimes have to be to understand the pastime fully. There's many levels, and one of those many levels you're pointing to, that is the Lord's pleasure in having a fight. And since there was no fight, did he get pleasure? That's the question. It's not necessary for his pleasure that there must be a fight, but there was certainly antagonism from the side of Shishupal. There's some very interesting commentary that says, although he was blaspheming Krishna, he had become more purified than Hiranyakashipu and Ravana. He had become more purified by his constant calling Krishna's name. He was his relative. They were just like cousins, like Arjuna was his cousin, Nrsimhadev was his cousin, Shishupal was his cousin. So he had been, to a degree, purified. So it wasn't the happiness of a fight, the transcendental happiness of transcendental fighting, but it was bringing this Jai back to the Vaikuntha realm, and holding back Bhima, who wanted to smash him, etc., 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 and teaching a lesson about the peril of blasphemy of the devotees and the Lord. So there was pleasure in that, but not so much in the tussle. Now, there's, like I said, there's layers, so there's many lessons, and the certain consequence of being destroyed if one takes an inimical position to the Supreme or his devotees. That's a lesson that he also wanted from that pastime. But remember, Shishupal was favored by some.
Thank you, Maharaj. So next question was there was some discussion with some devotees, and it came to me that what is the purpose of human life? Is it like service to Krishna or going back to Godhead?
That's easy. You want to answer that one?
Because
It's service.
yeah, that's
So without asking. So why are you asking?
because of that discussion.
Well, that's not the goal of life. Is the goal of life is to restore our position as eternal servants. Jiver Svarupai Nityar Krishna Das. Restore that. And then if you restore that, then Krishna, Krishna can send you wherever he wants.
Right.
And then, because if you're in that position, absorbed, you're back to Godhead wherever you are. So go back to Godhead as a consciousness situation more than a geographic destination.
Yes. Thank you. Last question, Maharaj. So this is for my personal application that, like, as you mentioned, Maharaj, about this devotee who were reading Bhagavatam but they were not particularly following ISKCON. So in my personal life, I feel a barrier whenever I'm like forming new friends or like new relationships. So at the back of mind, it is going on, hey, whether they follow Prabhupada's teaching or whether they follow ISKCON or not, whether I should be connecting. So because of that barrier, there is no depth in that connection. And I feel it is superficial to some level, and I struggle because it is not authentic. I feel that.
Well, that's just immaturity. It's, immaturity is just a stage, and the maturity is another stage. Here's a nice example, a very nice example. Did you hear? I think you did hear. I spent practically a whole month reading every evening from Giriraj Maharaj's "I'll Build You a Temple."
Yes.
Yeah. So one of those was the third and less attended pandal in Bombay. Prabhupada saw somebody walking around in the audience that was very clearly a Muslim man from the way he was dressed. So Prabhupada pointed him out to one of the persons on the stage and asked him to come to the stage. He came to the stage. Prabhupada asked him to sit next to him. Just right, his purpose was not converting the man. For whatever was going on, he had met with him, spoke with him after the speaking on the stage, different things. What do you have there? You have some beads. You should it's good to put the beads in a covered place because they maybe get touch something unclean. Just, it's encouraging him in his practice. And the man asked, can we meet again later? The man came back and met Prabhupada at Juhu, and he brought a friend, and it turns out he was chief of police in some place. You remember that? Yeah. And his friend was also a high-ranking officer, and he came to India because he had to have a certain operation. There was a specialist hospital, and he had just been released. And he was just walking around and came across the pandal, and Providence made the arrangement. And then Prabhupada was just encouraging him. I also go to Iran, and there's many nice people there, and some persons are also chanting Hare Krishna. He didn't like our ism is better than your ism. That wasn't his approach. His approach was elevating his consciousness and understanding the principles. And the principles, he recommended something for reading. I can't remember the detail. But that man later, had very deep appreciation for Prabhupada. He didn't stop doing what he was doing and, doing the betterism. Wasn't the objective. But that's mature. And how did Prabhupada even pick him out in the crowd and ask him to come and sit with him, next to him? On the stage. Gosh. Who knows what that would look like? There's a man that's very clearly an Islamic man by his dress and everything else. Anyway. That takes maturity and having some fences when there's... Prabhupada gave this example. When you have a tree or a bush or something that you're growing, you put a little fence around it when it's young, because animals may come and harm the thing and won't grow properly. So you put a fence around it, and after the tree becomes sturdy and strong, the fence isn't required anymore. So don't worry about it. Just don't be an imitator. Don't be a pretender. Be who you are. And if you're feeling a little insecure, then go ahead, be a little insecure. But look for a principle. And where principle is being applied, because that's what Prabhupada would speak about all the time, then respect goes, because there's someone that's doing nicely with the principles of their life, a principle-centered person.
Little follow.
Okay.
So like part of relationship is, exchanges also, like exchange of food, maybe exchange of thoughts and all those things. So,
So do that.
but they are not following those things. So we have to set some boundaries there and then.
Yeah. It's okay. It's okay. One of the persons at the program today said there's somebody from the Ukraine staying in their home, a lady and her 2 children or something like that. And, their habits aren't her habits. Eating habits are not her habits. What to do? I said, depends on you and depends on them. But you're very kindly extending hospitality to them. You're the host, they're the guest. And you don't have to force them to do what you do, but at least in your home, there's different things, like 5 different things you can do, but they should be respectful until they get situated, if they're going to stay on in America, till they get their situation. They respect your habits. If they want to eat something, they can go eat outside. But, when you're in your home, maintain your standards. And she said, "Oh, it costs more." I said, "Which is more important, money or your value, your standards and your principles?" She said, "You're right." And if depending, there's other options besides that one. But, just be respectful without compromise. That's possible. Takes being a little graceful to be principle-centered and at the same time respectful to others that may have different principles.
Thank you.
Something else? You have an online something or other? Okay.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. There is one comment and there is one set of questions. The first one is it's from Mr. X. Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances at your lotus feet. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Please bless me so that I can attain Krishna Prema in this life.
Okay. Blessings.
Next is from Shrid Das Prabhu. He says, Guru Maharaj, this question came up in our Harikatha discussion group. The Kurukshetra war, even on moral grounds, even without involvement of Supreme Lord Krishna, seems to be valid cause to fight. On top, Krishna wanted the war to happen. When there was a fight between Indians and British during Prabhupada's time, it seems the act of fighting back is justified.
No. Excuse me for interrupting. What's the religious principle? Why was it justified? It was politics. Next.
Yeah. Even we hear an example that when there is someone violence to our near and dear, except if we are Brahmana, becoming violent to protest ourselves is justified.
Well, we find that in Bhagavad Gita. There are 5 manners in which violence is appropriate. Sounds like it's one of those 5.
But Srila Bhakti Siddhanta did not approve when Bose approached to take his disciples, and he said Krishna consciousness cannot wait. Although both situations are similar.
No, they're not.
In the sense that he's saying which is usurping another's possessions. in that sense.
Huh? You follow what he's saying?
The British took over India's land. Yeah.
Yeah.
And therefore it's similar to the Kauravas taking the Pandavas' land. Therefore they're aggressors. So he's making the argument that in both cases possessions are taken, and in both cases aggression, and so is it justified? Why is it that Bhaktisiddhanta took a different stance than Krishna?
I mean, it's just politics. It's just politics. You want to say
I
something?
just want to comment on that.
Maharaj, in Mahabharata, Krishna tried every other method besides war. And when there was no other chance, then they went to war. There was no such attempt.
At the same time, Krishna provoked Duryodhana on purpose because Krishna had a higher purpose. It's not the same. Next. That's it. Anything else?
Maharaj, I have a question.
Yeah. Okay.
In one of the verses you read, this is a very beautiful section.
Krishna came to annihilate miscreants. That made it the religious war that it was. It's not just usurping. Go ahead.
In one of the verses you read, which, by the way, is a really beautiful section, Prahlad Maharaj's prayers, Prahlad uses the word vidikaras for the devas, for the demigods, saying that they are executors of your order, and sattva dhamna, they're always situated in the transcendental world. So the way he saw them is, he's telling Lord Nrsimhadev, they've done so much service for you, they execute your order.
Yes.
Yet Prahlad is seen so differently by the Lord.
Yes.
Could you comment on this difference? And I know you've...
Well, a gulf of difference is not just service rendered, but the consciousness behind the service rendered. Prahlad had zero interest in anything material. I mean, it's one of those things that Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur describes. Those that have no material interest, the Lord can entrust all kinds of assets to, like Ambarish Maharaj, or Yudhisthira Maharaj, or Prahlad Maharaj. He became emperor of, everything that Hiranyakashipu was in charge of, because he had no attraction for being the enjoyer of all of that. And those that have some attraction, they may have less because they can't handle it. They'll become enamored and bewildered. In his case, so it's in the commentary about Prahlad specifically. Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur, long description. The Lord knows who he can entrust asset to, like Prabhupada, without becoming, charmed by his affluence or his influence, because there was no there's no greed or no material anything, and then the Lord can give everything. Does that address your question? So the demigods, they were doing, and they had, but they had, there was some pride, and they weren't pure in their devotion as Prahlad was. Therefore, they're demigods. Demigods are very exalted servants, and they have some material mix going on. Otherwise, they'd be in the spiritual world. So they're to be highly respected by Prahlad and by us and by everyone. But it's higher than that is the pure devotee. Regardless of anything, volumes of service or something. No, they're trustworthy people. Therefore, they're given a lot of responsibility, a lot of power. But they get carried away sometimes. Anything?
Hare Krishna Maharaji. So while you were telling all the small stories, in one of the stories you said that Nrsimhadev came and he made one of the disciples scared because he was not doing things correctly. So usually my impression was like with demigods, if you pray them, you get all the benefits. If you don't pray them, if you forget to pray, you get all the repercussions, ill fate and all those things. So when you said that the lady got thyroid because she forgot to offer the bracelet, so it was something similar that would happen if I don't pray a demigod.
It's a kindness.
Okay.
It's different. When the Lord does these things, it's the relationship and the exchange is altogether different. It's a loving exchange. It's not a punishing exchange.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I understand. Because she got sick, so I was like, okay, if I forget to offer something, if I get sick,
No.
So,
Not like that.
okay.
Not like that. It's a loving exchange. Sometimes we need a little bonk in the head, or boot in the seat of the pants to help us. Oh yeah, and it can be done gently and lovingly. That's it, I think. Okay. Srila Prabhupada.